If you've struggled with stress, balance, or burnout, and simply feel discouraged or even defeated, and if you're ready to move from force to flow and enjoy ultimate Zen success in your career, health, or relationships, then the Zen Success Show is for you. Your host, Carissa Sims, is an entrepreneur, corporate consultant, best-selling author, meditation teacher, and healer who has found her own Zen success. Here's your host, Carissa Sims. Welcome to this week's episode of Zen Success. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Kim Nugent. Hi, Kim.
Hello, Teresa. How are you?
Good, good. Let me introduce Kim and share a little of her background. Kim Nugent, ED, is the CEO and Innovation Leadership Coach for Kim Nugent Enterprises. Kim is a Marshall Goldsmith Master Certified and ICF-certified coach. She specializes in being a leadership and staff development and mentorship subject expert. Her passion is always finding new ways to support professionals in their career growth. Kim is a 9-time best-selling author. That's impressive. Her passion is working with correction staff to impact workplace culture. Kim also works with incarcerated men and women to become the best versions of themselves through a structured mentorship program for both pre-release and post-release. She has created a food service mentorship program to retain staff. In her free time, Kim volunteers for the Bridges for Life program. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, and I was just wondering, where did you find this passion to work with incarcerated men and women? Where did you find that drive?
Well, actually, it was through a conversation from a gentleman who called me out of Arizona. He was doing meditation work in prisons and found really a fantastic results that he was getting, and he became curious, like, if that works, what else could work? And so he knew that I was a subject matter expert when it comes to mentorship, and he said, had I ever seen a book written about mentorship specifically in prisons? And I said no. And he said, would I be willing to write a book about that? And I said yes. And then I hung up the phone honestly and said, what the heck did I just say yes to?
It was almost like your soul was speaking for you, but like the 3D version of yourself was like, probably, I don't have time for this.
Well, it's I think your audience can relate to the times in your life when you've said yes to something
Mm.
and you didn't know the how or the what, or you said no to something and you might have wondered later, was that the right thing to say? But in that moment, it felt right. But I will say, I didn't write one page for 5 years because I went on a really extensive research study to find out what I didn't know. So, to your point, it's definitely a different place to look. I know mentorship works everywhere, but I didn't know enough about anything that was going on. And I did everything possible before I wrote my first word about what it would be like to be incarcerated and what would make a difference specifically with someone who is incarcerated. What do they need to be successful, to be the best version of themselves?
Mm. So I would love to hear about this 5 years. That sounds like complete dedication and what it would feel like to be incarcerated. Did you have any, like, did you spend a night in prison or did you interview people? What was this process for you?
So many things. I would say the first opening was, this was not my first book. I'll say it that way. And so I had the opportunity. I was actually on the board of Goodwill in Central Texas, and they were doing some amazing work and got an invitation. They were doing high schools inside of prisons, and I got an invitation to go visit and then ultimately taught career development classes within that particular facility. So that was kind of the first foray, if you will. Then I signed up for conferences. I read books. I've talked to many wardens. I have been to death row. I have interviewed people who've been into certain ministry programs. I spent weekends in prisons with people who were ministering to people, whether that was a music ministry or some other intensive version of what spiritual transformation could look like. I could go on and on and on, but you get the idea that, anything related to this topic is something I wanted to know about because clearly I didn't.
Yes. And specifically the aspect where there was a high school within a prison, was that for adults or was that juvenile delinquents?
No, so interesting. There was a woman that I met, and her name was Tracy, and she ended up lobbying the state of Texas specifically to be able to have adults have the opportunity to earn a high school diploma. Up
Mm.
until her work specifically, what happened was that in the state of Texas, you really couldn't, as you aged out of high school, the only option for you was really a GED. And she's an amazing person. And she saw the need because obviously past the age of, let's say 21 in this case, but your life has gone on, right? Whether you
Yeah,
have that education or not. And
right.
so
You
she
don't think
was,
about going back to high school after being, I mean, I can imagine you would not want to, unless you're in some kind of movie like Jump Street or, you know.
well, what was really interesting about her, so she did get a yes to that, and the high school programs are in many facilities. But what's interesting about it is, at the time I was a university president, and when I went to visit her campus in Austin, the thing that I thought was so great is I wish I had had a campus like that. She thought of everything. So what I mean by that is, so if I've been out of school for a while, my life has gone on. I probably have children. Let's start there. I may be a single mom. I may be a single dad. Don't know. That's the first thing. The second thing, though, is that high school diploma can really mean something in terms of income. So what she did was it's basically kind of like going to a college campus. It's a two-story building. And when you go in, they assess your credits, what you've earned already in high school, and then they give you a curriculum to follow so that you can do that. But in addition to that, what do you do with your kids? So they had free babysitting on site while you were in classes if you took mandatory parenting skills, which I think is incredible. Everyone got a life coach. Now, the ratio wasn't 1-to-1, obviously, they had a caseload, but you got a life coach. It was also clear that some students were not at reading level, so they had a reading class. For some people, English is not their first language. They had an ESL class in order to make that transition. Phenomenal. And they've been doing this for, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years. And they have all these pictures, all these graduations. And so the kids get to see their mom or dad graduate from high school. And it, really in terms of talking about change and transformation in a family, it's just critical. And I was just so taken by the whole thing. This is amazing. So you can now earn a high school diploma in the state of Texas from the age of basically 21 to 52.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I wonder if she'll go back someday and have college courses because I know a lot of high schools are now letting high school students take college courses for free. I mean, that's like a whole nother level. But anyway, I just think it's interesting. What do you think about that?
I'd have to talk to her about that. Obviously, there's such a huge need in the market that she's working on. The other thing that she did, and I want to say this was, I don't remember the exact year. Uh, in some ways, COVID helped all of us with regards to the internet and everything else. And so she was able to pivot from just that, I'll call it brick and mortar building, to have students be able to access the program via the internet. Now, that comes with lots of other things, but also she was able to get a grant in Austin for the possibility, I mean, not possibility, they actually had it, to have tablets so that they could take their schooling. Because that's the other thing is, I probably don't have a computer. Then that presents a whole nother set of issues in terms of economics. But she is brilliant. Let me say that. And the other thing about her is that she's thought through any what are the barriers that could keep someone from actually earning that diploma. And I think she's been amazingly successful.
That's so wonderful. And I was wondering, what have you found the difference is when you're mentoring someone in prison, about to maybe get out of prison or maybe not, versus someone like in a corporate setting?
Mhm. So I started in a corporate setting, so we'll start there.
Okay.
And we talk about mentorship, I have worked I still work in a corporate setting. And also, I've worked with high school students, I've worked with people who are incarcerated. So the structure is not different. The topics are different in terms of what is the end goal ultimately. So, is it, if you're talking about in the corporate world, it's probably to be seen or to obtain a promotion, but you have to be working on the things that are keeping you from getting promoted. In high school, could be choosing what's next for me after high school graduation. And there's a lot of choices out there today. And certainly college is not the only option. And then, of course, for people who are incarcerated, it's working on the soft skills and the employability skills, as well as developing a very practical plan for release.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have any inspiring stories to share? I mean, did you prefer mentoring women versus men? Or I would love to hear a success story from one of your mentoring
So,
sessions.
so currently, I only work with men, and the reason is just because the populate about 93% of the people who are incarcerated happen to be men. And so
Yeah.
there's a bigger need. We'll start there. So I don't really have a preference, but in terms of I go where the need happens to be.
Okay.
I have many stories. Some of them could be singular events, and some of them could be bigger things. But if I just talk about, I always liked, after I developed my program, after I wrote the book, I developed a program. It's really a curriculum, and it's a 6 to 9 month curriculum where I train the mentors to have small groups and they go through the curriculum over this time period. And obviously, after I do the train the trainer program with the mentors, were the incarcerated men, then I leave. But I'm in constant communication, meaning weekly communication with the facility to find out what's going on. Where are we in terms of the week? Where are the highlights and the lowlights? Also, seeing graduation. I'll start with the end in mind, and so I get to go back. I'm invited every single time to go back to graduation. And, I certainly remember these men when we started the program, and sometimes they're not really sure what they've really signed up for to be in the program. They're very clear by the time we finish the training. However, to see them then and then to see this evolution of how they have changed personally as a result of really mentoring these other men, but also they've grown themselves. And to see them at graduation, speaking, because they have a huge part of graduation. So we typically have between 2 and 4 mentors and 2 and 4 mentees speak in terms of the impact, whether it was working with a mentee or whether that was that impact for them personally. It's one thing. I definitely know for sure that once the program gets started, they like to share what they're doing in prison, meaning a class, what they're reading or what they're learning, and they share that back with families. So it's changing family conversations. So much more interesting than, talking about the same old thing, or they're frustrated and the mom or wife is frustrated at home having to take care of all these things without her husband or her boyfriend. That's one thing. Definitely, what's changing are the conversations. Every day with these men is it's at least it's the same topic, and so it's really kind of consistency with regards to that. I've seen these guys even de-escalate situations with officers. I have seen families get restored. I have seen. Um, Usually there's someone in the program where over time, and I'll say at least 3 times when I go back, at least, generally there's someone who kind of rises to the top where all of a sudden they found their purpose, meaning teaching. And so I teach them to become me inside the prison so that program can continue because, the most powerful teachers are the ones who've actually lived it. And so, because it is a lived experience, and mentorship certainly makes a difference, mentorship in prisons can reduce recidivism up to 40%.
Mm. And do you feel like it's because they're empowered and they feel like they have a purpose now?
Definitely a purpose for sure. I can tell you that they wake up in the morning and they have a reason to get out of bed, whether they're serving a life sentence or whether they will get out in the next 1 or 2 years. Those that have a life sentence and who are getting up they found themselves is that, you know what, I can make a difference in someone else's life, someone who is going to go into what they would say is the free world, and to be able to have a better version of themselves. And so they can, they feel good about that. So I definitely think that that makes a big difference for sure, becoming a mentor. And so that's one thing. I think the other thing is that whether it's me and my program or some other program, when someone from the outside comes into a facility, whether we say it or not, they get to see they're not forgotten. And
Mm.
I think sometimes people feel like they're forgotten, but they matter a lot. And I very quickly, one, I love being there. I learn as much from them, hopefully, as they learn from me. But they actually, the reason it works is it's structured. So they have an article they read every single week, and there's a set of questions for the mentees and a set of questions for the mentors. I say that all to say is that I can tell you there are tons of organizations and tons of universities across the United States that love to have mentorship programs. And in theory, it is a fantastic idea. In reality, not so much. So they'll put a lot of time in communicating, hey, we're going to have this mentorship program. They'll identify the mentors and the mentees. They'll have a meet and greet, and all that is super fun. But where it starts to fall apart is usually around the third meeting. Because there was no structure or no set of expectations. How often are we meeting? What's the goal? And what do you want to get out of this? And what is the role of the mentee in terms of coming up with the things they want to learn and vice versa? It sort of kind of disappears. We don't want it to disappear. I think they also get excited because we have 26 topics, and generally there's several topics that just really mean something to them. Like, wow, I never thought about that before. And so that's exciting when you can see, you know what, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm changing, I can feel it. My family's saying I'm changing. That's exciting too.
Yeah, that's amazing. Did you ever run into any situations where you felt afraid for your safety?
No.
Oh, that's amazing. I love to hear that. It's interesting. I have a consulting background working with corporations, and one of my clients was a prison system. I have been in the prisons, but I wasn't there helping the prisoners. I was there helping the employees. But I did get to interact with them a little bit, and I really felt my heart expand, because you're right about being seen. When I recognized them and actually said hi, they were so excited that someone cared, that someone didn't look down on them or see them as different or, just like a regular person. So I don't know. It was just interesting. I was in a juvenile prison and also like an adult prison. So yeah.
Well, I can honestly say, and you kind of express it through your face and what you said, but for me, it's the most rewarding work I've ever done.
Mm. And I bet that surprised you.
Very much so. I mean, I love teaching and I like doing that. And I do believe in second chances. And I do think education is definitely power. And but I've seen it firsthand. But they for every single facility is very different, but and each one has a uniqueness to it. But there will be something in the process that either they're like, you know what, we love this, we want to learn more. And so in one facility, for example, they asked the program warden if they could have a book on each one of the topics I wrote about because they wanted to go deeper. At another facility that actually said, hey, we really like this. Can we have a self-development section in our library? It's a law library, but they didn't have any of that, but could we? There's all kinds of things. There's one group that decided that, you know what, we're going to create our own bylaws and we are going to have standards for these guys. And that's everything from, hygiene to haircuts to name it. And they instill it. I'm like, it's amazing how they personalize it. They've taken it to a whole nother level that I could only imagine.
Yeah, that's interesting. And can you share how these mentors are selected? Is there an application process? Do you just see the sea of men and you say, you?
So it's changed over time. Um, what has been consistent all the way is the very first time I'm going into a facility, I have the warden or the assistant warden choose the initial group. They know them well, I don't. So that's sort of how we go in. When I first started, the criteria was, and we do have an application, but the criteria was They would be out within the next year to 2 years. And very quickly, we just said no. And we said no for a variety of reasons. And so, what I think sometimes happens, and I've seen this firsthand, is that's okay. But the but for me is what about the guys that will never get out? Like,
Yeah.
that's not okay either. So that was one thing. Another thing in the beginning was we were pretty, it was only one time when I started, and then after that, we threw out all the rules. But originally, it was
You threw out all the rules.
meaning we were looking for specific, there were certain categories of crime that we were not going to let them participate in.
Mm.
We let anybody, maximum security, don't care what the crime is. And the reason is it needs to be fair. If you really want someone to change, why would you deprive them from the opportunity to learn and grow? So I never ask them about their sentence. I don't ask them about their crime. I'm not there for that. I am there to teach them a new skill set that they can use it either inside that facility or outside that facility.
Oh, I see. And so that helps you not be biased and have consistent information for your training.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk about your book, From Prison to Possibilities. It's such a powerful title. Can you share the process in writing that, coming out with it? Is it a bestseller? Yeah.
So I think, probably from your consulting work, you want to meet that organization or those people where they are and you want to move them forward in some kind of direction. So when I chose the title, we'll start there. It's from something, right? So from prison to
Yes.
to possibilities. And I do believe anything is possible if you believe it's possible. So we
Yeah,
have
that belief is
to
key. But it's hard to believe. I'll just say, I feel like they're at a disadvantage a little bit because in prison, it feels like literally they're in a box. Sometimes we're in a prison in our own minds,
very
a
much
lot of
so.
times, but they're in a
Actually,
physical and mental prison.
absolutely, for sure. And actually, I've met people sometimes, in the corporate world that are more constrained mentally than some people who are incarcerated physically.
Oh my God.
Which helps keep me focused on wanting to come to work every day and make a difference in people's lives. Because when I see that kind of transformation, and then I come outside and I'm working in a corporation or working with people, and I think about, I don't think you know what a problem really is. So for me, it
Yeah.
keeps me so straight and centered, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, and it probably makes you a better mentor all around, like a straight shooter, because you're like, okay, this is not an excuse, okay? I'm not buying this. Let's just
If you knew what a
say,
real problem was, then
yeah,
we'd have something to talk about.
right, right, exactly. So I get it. I get it. And it really like warms my heart, that title, because I feel like it's a revolution to think about prisoners as like having hope and possibility, because a lot of times they're just thrown aside and it's like there's no hope. And so, what do you think about that?
So, one of the things I think about, and you and I have never talked about this before. So, when I was writing the book, which is the question you just asked a minute ago before this one, and that was about the process of writing this book. Now, I have written books before this book. I knew what the topic was going to be. Obviously, I knew who the audience was going to be. I knew it was going to be a structured mentorship program. After that, I knew nothing. So, when I went to write this book, I just free write, just so you know. And then after I wrote the book, and then, we go through the editing and all that. But before that happened, when I actually looked at the book that I had typed up before I sent it to anyone to be published, I couldn't believe the book. And what I mean by that is the book surprised me. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but there is this very strong spiritual undertone to the entire book.
Oh, you
That was
channeled it. You
a
channeled it.
100%. I don't even really remember writing this book, which is crazy when you think about it, because um, I think it's a special book, honestly. It's probably none of my other books look like this book.
Oh, interesting. Well, maybe that's why I was feeling my heart expand with the name and the book. I was like, this isn't just, yeah, an ordinary book. And yeah, you confirmed that. Well, you've authored two other books on prison
Mhm,
reform. How do these works differ in
mhm.
terms of message and impact? And do they go together?
Yes, they do. And one of the things that I think is, and a lot of, I'll say 50% of the prisons in the United States have some kind of programming, whether it's a GED program or they have anger management classes or basic computer. They have some classes and some have none. So I think programming, no matter what the program is definitely the way to go because you're filling idle time. Now, what I really believe is programming by itself is not the end all be all, whether it's my program or somebody else's. But what could be true transformation inside a prison facility is what if the staff went through a program, much like your consulting work, and the incarcerated men or women go through prison of possibilities. And okay, that's two-thirds of it probably. Then there's the kitchen staff and incarcerated men or women if they allow that. And so now we have a turnkey solution. So I have a program, it's a mentorship program for, it's called um, Advancing Careers in Corrections, and that is for the staff from the warden down to the correctional officer, where the warden is the mentor or wardens, depending on what the size is. They are working week to week with the staff to create that relationship. That is critical in today's world with regards to the generations. So your millennials and Gen Zs expect to be, I always say it's a demand, to be mentored or coached today in a workplace setting, or they'll go somewhere else. So that
Oh, wow. I
loyalty,
didn't know that.
no,
I didn't.
that is true. It's one of the
Okay.
top five reasons today.
Oh, so that could be, I mean, this is a whole nother topic, why some of them are leaving because they are looking for that mentorship. Interesting.
100%. And so that's one of the five reasons for retention. So I think it's really critical. And I think sometimes in a very, I mean, it's a serious business. Let's talk for real, right? Corrections is a very serious business, and they definitely get the training and security and operations and protocol and the rules and
Hmm.
those things. And that's what their focus is. And yet you still can't lose the fact that these are human beings. So, coming at it differently to de-escalate situations or treat people with respect and dignity solves a multitude of problems all by itself. So now we've got the staff, if they're going through a program, we've got the men and women going through prison of possibilities, and then the kitchen staff, which is a lot of people, meaning staff and inmates working together. The reason I'm super excited about that is, early on in my career, I spent 25 years in the hospitality industry and I have a degree in hotel and restaurant management. And I know it's a viable career path. And I know that during COVID, a lot of the establishments in the United States were hit really badly because they couldn't pivot that fast. There was too many things going on, obviously, but still they haven't
Yeah.
recovered. So there could be a restaurant in your area that has a sign that says "Help Wanted," or we can't seat in this station because we don't have enough servers tonight to be able to fill this particular area of the dining room.
Oh, yeah. I
So,
see that in Colorado for sure. I live in Colorado. There's, you know, help wanted signs everywhere. Unemployment rate is so low. They need help. Definitely.
well, everybody does. And going back to kind of the retention thing that I had mentioned before, which
Hmm.
is so here's what's also happening at the same time. I think we can solve a couple of problems all in this little conversation. So, right now, we have baby boomers retiring at a very fast rate. We only have about probably 15% still left in the workplace. All
Okay.
right. So, that next generation, which was Gen X, they didn't have enough babies to fill that number. So,
Mm.
it is a mathematical equation. So take that, then take what happened with COVID and take what happened with, restaurants in particular. So we now know that we have a labor shortage in this area for
That's
sure.
true. That's
But
true.
what if then these restaurants would become second chance employers because there are people ready to work. And I would put any man or woman that's working in a prison kitchen against anybody working in a kitchen today because they have to do like 2,000 meals 3 times a day. The production work is unbelievable. Now, in our program, they can sit for the Serve Safe certification, which means that you've saved time and money for an employer. They know what sanitation practices are. They certainly know how to be able to cool down soup, for example. They know all the proper handling methods for food. You want somebody who's had that training to come in and kind of hit the ground running, if you will. So I feel like there's an opportunity here for us to take a look at something we haven't really looked at, and that is the book for people who are working in the kitchen specifically, because it is a viable career path once they're released.
Interesting. So are you saying in the prison they put prisoners are working in the kitchen. They
Correct.
work, oh, okay, got it. And they'll be discharged and they can go work in the kitchen, not necessarily as servers, because you're thinking like more behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes if they choose to. Now, some of these guys, honestly, they have big dreams and goals, or they were already trained in another discipline. Nothing wrong with any of that. A choice is also, one thing we want them to consider. But plan B could be, if that doesn't work out, the dream that you have for yourself because things got in the way, this could be another viable career path for you.
Yeah, and how can you or others open up employers' minds to people being released from prison? Because there's always something on the application. I guess people could lie on the application, but if they didn't lie, I guess they would go through a program like yours, or there'd be some kind of contract like that.
Well, in my perfect world, which we don't live in, but
Well, there's always hope, possibilities, right? Anything's
possibility.
possible.
What I'd love to see is, and I haven't gotten there yet. This is the next part. So once that we have proven out the food service, meaning many cohorts, and they decided, let's just say, out of all the people, let's just say there's 60 people in the kitchen. That's just a number I'm pulling out of my head. But let's say that in the next year, 4 people would like to go into food service. What would be ideal is if they had the program and then either they talked to the assistant warden or myself about how could we have, like, I'll say it's called first look in my mind. So come in, meet the people, kind of do a pre-interview, if you will, get to know the person, find out what they've been doing the whole time they were incarcerated, what programs have they taken advantage of, how do they feel if they've changed, answering those difficult questions, form the relationship before they ever get out, so that when they get out, there's a really good possibility they would get hired.
Oh, I love that idea. Yeah, the roadmap for that. That's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. That sounds like a really viable option. Well, you've conducted on-site training in maximum security prisons in Florida, Texas, Mississippi. What does that training involve, and how do you tailor it to each facility's challenges?
So the so what's different is every prison is in a different location, different size, number of people in the actual facility, certainly, the programs that already exist, also the designation. Sometimes lately all I've been going into are maximum security prisons, but it could be a state jail. It could be minimum or moderate security. It could be maximum security. It could also be you name any kind of version. So I like to know that before I go in. It doesn't impact me, but I just kind of like to know kind of the setting.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, though, what happens is I never look for the differences. I actually look for the similarities. And what I know at the end of the day is we're all human beings, period. And the other thing I believe in that I think is really helpful is when I go in, I actually do believe in second chances. And I think a mistake or several mistakes, serious, yes, they are. And I don't take that for granted. And yes, they should serve their time, but that shouldn't define you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I love that. That's not necessarily who you are or who you are now. In that moment, yes, you made a mistake. That's amazing. That's such a different perspective. Can you describe a moment during your prison training that really moved you or shifted your perspective?
Um, First training group I had, and it was the mentors, and there were 10 guys in the room, 10 or 12 guys. um, because I've spent a couple of days, so I spend typically 2.5 days at the facility working with them for 8 hours at a time to get them ready to be the mentor. And they
Okay.
get to practice things. First, they do some self-reflection, they do a routing exercise. Then after that, I will pair them up with somebody else to kind of get used to kind of the ebb and flow of asking questions and taking notes and getting to know the person. Then we move into small group. So they are actually going through the curriculum themselves so they feel like they know how to do this. And then I rotate that so that they can hear different people's perspectives on how they would actually teach that particular topic, which is very helpful. Just because I have a way of doing it doesn't mean you would do it that way. And once you start to tell me how you would do it, it's like, oh, wow, I never thought about that. That's pretty awesome. So again, they learn from each other. But the last thing that I do before I leave, I'll ask two questions. But the first question is, what are you taking away from this training for yourself? I never know where that question's going to land. And this particular class, it was predominantly, excuse me, Christian men in the class. One gentleman had identified himself as a Muslim. And so I had asked the question, three guys, and they said whatever they said. And when I got to the fourth gentleman, he said something very softly, and I could barely hear him, but I could hear what he did say. And he said, what I learned for myself is forgiveness, which
Mm.
I didn't think much. But then what happened is he stood up and he walked over to another guy on the other side of the room and he asked forgiveness. I have no idea what transpired between them.
Right.
And the gentleman said, yes, absolutely. And they shook hands and they hugged each other. And then they both ended up crying. That
Yeah.
doesn't happen in prison. This is only on the second day of training. And so if that's possible in 2 days, can you imagine what's possible in a small group over a 6 to 9 month period? When
Mm.
these guys get to say what gets to be said, and our rules are everything you talk about in small group is confidential. And
Yes.
so otherwise you've lost all the trust of the people in your group and we can't have that. So once that trust is built, they will find out in week 5, 6, whenever, that they can start to say things they've never said to anybody else. And that's when true healing begins.
Yeah, that's incredible. Have you ever heard of this book, Zero Limits?
Mm-mm.
There was this doctor that went into a mental institution, and this is very out there, but I just thought, I don't know why it's coming up to share it. And all he did was he saw the patients as perfect and whole and said, this process, Ho'oponopono, I'm sorry, I love you, I forgive you. And so he did this for about a month and they all got discharged. They all healed. I thought that was amazing. It's like seeing somebody in the light of like hopefulness,
Mhm.
healed the institution. So,
Well, I think, we have lots of stories, not necessarily in that particular domain, but if you
mhm,
think back to My Fair Lady or the Pygmalion story, is, he actually believed that something better was possible for her, right?
mhm.
That he could pass her off as this, lady of higher society or whatever, however you would say it today. And for me, if somebody is going to work with me to be a trainer, for example, one of the I only have one rule basically, and that is you have to be with people however they are or however they aren't.
Mm.
And I cannot have any judgment there because in that moment, people feel that.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. And you get paid for this, right? You're a
I do.
consultant and you have a
Hmm.
contract with the prison system.
Hmm. Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yes, wonderful. So, what role, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but what role do you believe love and empathy play in prison reform?
Well, I think it's where it starts. I mean, if you want to have real transformation, you have to have love and empathy. And because what happens through that process is accountability, some healing, as well as reintegration. So it's a process. And one of the things that I think is that when you show, meaning the mentor, well, let's start with me, but then when the mentors show care and empathy and love for this other human being. And I can tell you they're different. Just because they're in a small group doesn't mean anything, because they think differently, they have different backgrounds, different experiences. So they have to be with the guys however they are, however they aren't. They cannot get triggered, they cannot have judgment, they cannot criticize, like none of that. So you have to, so we're elevating their skills, but also they're learning from their mentees. No one has power over the other. And, sometimes the mentees have something even more powerful to say than the mentor, because again, different experiences are coming together. But I think that, what happens with love and empathy is that there's an emotional connection. And that's when things really start to change in terms of relationships.
Mm, yeah, that's beautiful. And what metrics do you use to measure the success of your programs?
Well, in the beginning, I thought completion rate was going to be the metric. I was wrong. Um,
And
not because
that's
I was
the
wrong,
6 month or 9 month program finish. Okay.
but the wardens taught me very quickly that there was a better metric. And so I listened to them because they're the experts. And they said, we would really like to track rule violations. So,
Oh, they're
which
getting very specific.
But actually, I had a conversation on Saturday with someone who I do share metrics with often. And he said, actually, Kim, we need to look below that. And what we need to look at, reduce contraband coming in, reduce sexual assaults, reduce de escalation or verbal assaults. Those things, we need to really take a look at that. And he said, we can find that information out because they track that information.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
but what I can tell you is, of the guys that go through the program, I'm not going to give you a specific number, but
Oh,
what
yeah.
has transpired, what has transformed dramatically is it's a much safer institution today because of the program. We hold the mentors and mentees to a higher standard. Like we expect you to and most of the facilities have created these. I didn't do it, but they did it. They created these badges that says mentor. So
Oh,
the officers know, good, bad, or indifferent. They know, you know what, you're in this program and people are watching. So they're becoming more visible by being a mentor or mentee in the program. So you better shape up and, you know, do, and act right, right? But otherwise, you
yeah.
will not be in the program. And so that's been incredibly helpful. But I didn't create that rule, first of all, they did. And then they're holding each other accountable, because peer accountability is really where you're going to get the power.
That's amazing. That's an incredible return on investment for
Mhm.
prisons. I mean, and it's something maybe you didn't even expect. It's
No,
wow.
no. And what I was really great is, the first time I did the training and went back for graduation, it was very clear to me these guys had invested a lot in themselves and the effort and time and everything else. And so what I said was, I don't want them to leave me because they put in the work. What's next for them? So what I typically will do is, after graduation, those mentors that would like to continue to be involved in the program, I will teach them an accelerated coaching class. They're not a coach, but I will teach them how can we elevate the critical thinking skills, because I really feel like they need to benefit from that. Then we ask the mentees, who would like to be a mentor? Now that you've gone through the program as a mentee, would you like to be a mentor? And most of them always say yes.
Yeah, that makes
And then
sense.
eventually the mentors will, now because they've already gone through the program once, they'll become, quote, internal coaches, and they will help the administration make sure that program continues. So hearing it a second time is never bad, but it's not the same. The guys are not the same. The topics are the same, yes, but things will come up. And now they're more experienced. And I have some that have gone through the program probably 8 times as a coach, and they're still getting a lot of value out of it. They haven't quit.
That's incredible. I love that. Well, if you could change one policy or practice in the US prison system, what would it be and why?
I think that we need to incentivize employers to be second chance employers.
I love that. Create a budget that actually pays them to hire people from the prison system. Oh, that's amazing.
I think it would be really good. There are models out there, some of our state
Yeah.
workforce solution places where that could be something that would serve them, but it would also serve the community, because the thing is so hard. I mean, I think about this often, but let's pretend for a minute that any one of us was incarcerated for 11 years
Yeah.
and we get out. So now you think about, where do I live? How I need a job. I need a cell phone. I need some kind of address where even if I am applying, I mean, on and on and on. You need a computer, like it is
You need
the,
money.
you need so many things. And, if you have no place to go that's safe, or you go back to where you were when you got incarcerated, that is not going to work. And they make it so hard just to even get to a job or do these things. Internet access, hey, I don't know anything about the internet for the last 11 years, right? I mean, so it goes on and on and on. It's so complex. But honestly, if we just started with employers, and that's the first thing, is let's get them employed, let's get a paycheck, and then let's rebuild a life, because we want them to be productive members. And they
Yeah.
do too. They do too.
And that's how they can reintegrate back into society, feel accepted, and yeah, and not go back to prison.
Right. But we make it so hard.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, what is Zen success to you, Kim?
Zen success. Well, one of the things, as a writer, as a coach, as a consultant, as a teacher, I think about success all the time, like what makes me happy, but I also think about what makes them happy. And the thing that makes me the happiest is when that light bulb goes on for someone, and you can see it, and they can see it, and they can feel it, like, oh my gosh, I never thought about this before. And maybe in a sentence, for the people I get to work with, when they go from it's all about me to, oh, it's all about them, or it's about my family. I never even saw that before. That is Zen success.
That really touched me. It brought tears to my eyes. It's been such a pleasure connecting with you. You're such a bright light in this world. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do, and your book, From Prison to Possibilities. And I'll put your website and how to buy your books in the show notes. And thank you so much for all you do and for being with me on the Zen Success Show, Kim.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I enjoyed it myself.
Great.
That's it for today's episode of Zen Success. Head on over to iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you listen to shows. Subscribe to the show and share with friends. Be sure to head on over to ZenSuccessShow.com to help you on your Zen success journey, and join us on the next episode. May you find your own Zen success in life.